Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thanks everyone for joining us for day 4 of Sidh Ghost.
Today's two presenters are two of our main facilitators with Civic. Inderpreet Singh is our Sikhi 101 instructor, and I met Inderpreet Singh probably, I want to say maybe 8-9 years ago, something like that. He had come to Vancouver to do a presentation and I met him then. And so we've known each other for quite a while, as well as Inni Kaur, who I had the pleasure of meeting just after I came to Civic. And most of you know who she is. But you'll get a chance to see these two incredible presenters today share their warmth and their knowledge and their wisdom with us today. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Inderpreet Singh and Inni Kaur to start us off with today's hukam. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. All right, so today's hukam from Sri Darbar Sahib in Sri Amritsar Ji is in Rag Tanasri by Guru Amar Das Sahib, by Nanak III. The heading of the hukam is Rag Tanasri Mahalla Tija Kar Chautha Ek Oankar Sadgur Prasad. And even before going to the main line that we're going to focus on, Rag Tanasri is very interesting. I like to always kind of remind folks, or maybe just inform, of the well-known shabads that are in these particular rags. So when we do Kirtan Soila every night, the Gagan Mein Thal Ravchan Deepak Bane, this is the Soila Arti, is also in Rag Tanasri. That was Guru Nanak. There are many other shabads that I'm sure many of you are familiar with in our old, like, classical or traditional shabads that are sung. For example, Okhi Kadi Na Dekhan De Apna Bir Samale, right? So that's also in Tanasri. It's towards the early evening setting rag, and it's the mood is very specific. I really somehow, it's not explainable to me, connect with when shabads are sung in Tanasri. And as soon as we do a Prakash at home, and I had a hukam in the morning, but also this one that I took from the Barsa, I also had the opportunity to listen to the shabad being sung in Rag Tanasri, which we can share as a resource later on. But the Rahal he took of this shabad by Guru Amar Das Ji is Hom Balhari Jaun Sache Tere Naam Bitto Karan Karan Sabna Ka Eko Avar Na Duja Koi. And as I don't know if that's been discussed before, the Rahal he took is usually kind of the main idea. Some people call it the punchline, or all the other lines within the shabad like revolve around the idea that is being presented in the Rahal he took, for pause and reflection. So and a transcreation has been presented over there, but here and in order to understand what the whole point of this line is in the context of the other lines, there was an asking, there was a very humble asking, there was a realization that what I'm asking for is really what will sustain me, right? In the voice of Guru Amar Das, but for us as well. And once that realization comes, I am completely devoted to this. I want to completely devote myself to this entity called Nam. So, and not just Nam, but Sacha Nam. So Sache Tere Nam Vitto. The word Balhari, Jana, etc. is used quite a bit. In the normal translations, you will hear it translated as sacrifice. And yeah, it is at that level that I am completely in awe and would do anything in order to attain that thing. So in cultural context, our grandparents' generation and older generation, I don't know how much it's being used now in our generations, when they are enamored by their kids or enamored by something, they'll say, Hai Sadke Jama, Hai Mani Vari Jama. And that's the idea over here. Guru Amar Das Ji is presenting that this Nam entity for me is such a huge thing. I want to completely devote myself. And the realization that I've had of asking for this and being engaged with it is that there's only one. There is nothing other than the one ikonkar. Everything that has happened, everything that is happening, everything that will happen is happening in the order of hukam of that one. So I've been going around, me as an Inderpreet, or in general, the other I, trying to attain, quote unquote. I look outside, I look inside, I look at different techniques, I look at different tools to attain some sort of like equilibrium or happiness. And Guru Sahib over here is saying, after all this quote unquote patakna, the words used in the Shabad is param. So in the last line is panat nanak param pat khule gur prasadi janya. After all of this going around and trying to figure out internal, external, social, religious, political, personal, like happiness, I realized that it's unnecessary to patakna. It's unnecessary to have doubt as to where really the answer lies. And the answer lies within the one. There's only one. And the one, ikonkar, is the doer of all things, and there is no one else. So that's really relates very well for the whole topic of Ghost. It relates really well to what we see today happening in society as well. Maybe within our own personal families, maybe within our career life, maybe in our communities, countries, that you can layer up as to whatever level that we want, is that there's a realization at the end, and this is a pattern in lots of shabads, but here specifically, Guru Amar Das Sahib, he actually starts with what I call an extreme imagery of humility. And he starts this with Ham pikak pekhari tere tu nijpat hai data. So a statement that I am the beggar of beggars. Peek mangana is to beg. Pikak pekhari tere. You're beggar of beggars, and you are the only one that, some say it can be I or it can be we. We are beggar of beggars. Nijpat hai data is like, and this ikonkar, this one eternal force, does not have any concept of needing to ask, because that entity is the doer. Ho deyal nam de. Okay, again, it's an asking of this nam, which he points over here, is that I'm just adorned. I have full adoration and fully devoted by nam itself. So again, there's an asking in a very humility, emanating sense. There is a statement saying that I am completely devoted and in full adoration of Nam, because the realization is that Nam to bagar kuch nahi hai. There is nothing other than the ikonkar. And in the last line, there's a panat nanak. So Nanak gracefully submits that this idea of, and I want to spend a little time on this param pat khule. Reason why is because actually the hukam that I had this morning also had this concept of opening of a parda. Param pat khule. Pat khulna has to do with a door or like a silken kind of separation of different sections of a house. And one side may be dark, the other side is light. And when you wake up in the morning, or as you were maybe when you were young, your mom comes in and says, "Get up, bete," and opens the curtains, and suddenly there's this flashing light. Oh my goodness, and can't handle it. So this idea is that that's what has happened after my patakna, after my doubt, that the darkness of doubt has disappeared. The curtains have opened, param pat khule. And it doesn't happen on its own. It's not like nowadays we ask Google or Siri or Alexa to open the curtains, switch on the lights. No, there is some entity that has to do that, or has to help us through that process. Gur Prasad is from the grace of the Guru. So Panat Nanak Param Patkule Gur Prasad Di Jane. I've come to this realization, which is again in the Rahul-lifestyle. So it's a beautiful, the same Shabad this morning had Kol Kiwar was the idea. It's the same concept of opening up the separation of doubt versus realization of the Ikonkar. Other places in Gurbani has said is as thin as the width of the wing of a butterfly is another metaphor that is used. It's so thin. There's not much effort required. There's an element of grace that's required. There's an element of Gur Prasad that is required. So the asking has to be there. An element of grace has to be there. And then it is giving up yourself, the Balihar Jana, and that having this attitude of Balihar Jana to Nam, you bring all of these pieces together and the realization comes, and then your attitude of life changes. So I think I'll stop there. That was about 5 or so minutes, and I'm going to try my best to follow the comments. I don't know how you have been doing it in previous sessions, but I would love for that. That was my humble, offering of what I understood the Bar Sahib Hukum to be today. But if others have any comments or additional.
So, Inderpreet, may I chime in here, please? But the thing that what really struck me was the ask. The ask was to look within and say, this is who I am, in utter humility. That ask was there. And then what, after you've asked, what then are you willing to do for it? For that ask, what is it next? And that's that devotion. That's that Balihari, that I will walk through fire for you. I will, through the rain, through everything. This is a bond which I will not break, and I will do anything. So that's that element of Balihari, where it is sacrifice, but there's sacrifice coming from great adoration and love. And there is a devotional element to it. So when we look at sacrifice in today's world, there's a negativity, there's a negative connotation, but this Balihar is very positive.
So I think that brings us now to, unless there's any other questions or logistics, I think let's start the presentation. So I do want to present over here, and maybe it was presented earlier, the Gurmat Framework, one of the concentric circles of how to get a full picture of a topic, a subject, an idea from a guru's wisdom perspective, right? Is you gotta also not just delve into the Bani, not just kind of connect that Bani to the role models that have lived that Bani, i.e. gurus or gurmukhs beyond, but also about the here and now and us as an individual, us as a community. And Rahat is sometimes translated, one would say, oh, that's the book of rules. That's exactly what the yogis were trying to present, that there's some mechanics to it. So, but this is more beyond. It's not just a book of rules. It's what is the attitude behind the lifestyle and disciplines that one would use to walk through life and guidance for that. So, and we're going to delve into that from that perspective. And as usual, you may have also seen a lot of quotes from Puran Singh, and Puran Singh presents what we're going to be covering here in the context of Sidh Gosti itself quite well. And what I think Sidh Gosti is a contrast and compare of a yogic culture versus what we are part of, or we choose to be part of a Nam culture. And he says that this system of yoga is confined to very prescriptive rules and regulations. It's definitely mechanical, algebraic. I mean, in the Bani itself, you may have seen references to 10 fingers of length, and so many different numbers have been thrown about. So this, what yogis are trying to do is have control over, and maybe potentially reach the same type of spiritual lengths that others would want to reach, but they prescribe very algebraic and mathematical and physical techniques in order to do it. These mechanical gifts of what they consider to be accomplishments. But true yoga, right? Patanjali's yoga, and this is, I think, has been covered, but they haven't really produced yogi. They haven't produced ones that have been in union. Yoga meaning union, so being realized, because even if they are realized, they confine it and not share it with the world. It's not broad, right? That's what Puran Singh's presenting. Again, Puran Singh and Bhai Veer Singh were contemporaries, and Puran Singh does present Bhai Veer Singh's view, but I thought this was a great way to share the alternate view of these mechanical yoga, which is the Nam culture. And I meant to say, you may have covered already, we will cover it here, is that the goal of in the yogic sense is to like nothingness, very small, very concentrated. The goal in the Nam culture is broad, very big, huge, impactful. So Nam is the inner mind blossoms like a lotus. There are many flowers in the world, but the lotus flowers, when you see it, it's like, wow, okay, that has established itself as something is there, right? And died, and the other aspect of it is love. When that Nam culture enters us, there is the vistas that open within, Bhai Veer Singh says. Again, obviously this is an English translation, he says it in Punjabi. Beautiful writing. So the ecstasy is not like the pleasure of bodily passions, something that are temporary. Again, remember, eternal versus temporary. It is Sat Nam, it is Sat Nam. It opens vistas within. The infinite potential of being part of the Nam culture is what Guru Nanak's culture is about versus the yogic culture. So compare and contrast, just as a reminder of what this whole Bani is really trying to establish, is a compare and contrast. At least that's how I would present it. Inni, should we go to the next?
Sure, sounds good. So what are the eternal questions? So let's begin with the definition of eternal so that all of us are on the same page. Eternal to me means having no beginning, no end. The eternal questions, one way of looking at it, the eternal questions are boundless. They take so long in asking that question, and they cannot truly fully be articulated, let alone be answered. And these questions, they keep changing because where we are in our stages of our life, our cultural, and what is happening with us. Those are those type of questions where the questions when you were in your teens, which you considered were eternal, changed when you were, when you entered the adolescent age, the age of the 20s, and now in the age of the 50s. What are those questions? But, there are certain questions in time immemorial that people ask those questions, which, is there a higher power? Is this all about life? And we as human beings, what are we expected to do in life? What is the purpose of my existence? So those are some of the questions which are eternal. And let's get to the next slide, which are the transitory questions. What are those questions, Inderpreet? We'll go to the next one. Yeah, these are the questions which are temporary in nature, and they last for a brief duration, like they're in the moment. You're in a conversation and you really want to know what this is, or you have a doubt in your mind, but then doubt is dispersed and then you go on to the next one. But these questions are not really fundamental to our existence, to who we are, our essence, to that journey inwards. If you choose to take that journey inwards. We have a few questions put up here, what we considered as transitory questions, but those are what we have put together. Now, if we go to the next one, I want to now that we've gone through the definitions of eternal and transitory, I thought it would be great to have you put up some of yours. What is my purpose here? Yes, that's definitely one of them. What is the purpose of life? This purpose question keeps coming up. Yep.
Why? Why am I here?
Yeah.
Very interesting one. I like, how can I impact the world uniquely?
Yeah.
Right? The question is of impact, and is maybe the purpose to have an impact.
Right. What is true, as Guru Sahib describes it? True is eternal, such, right?
Yeah.
So whatever that is, that eternal thing, that what you consider eternal, what Guru Sahib considers as eternal. And I think that is, not I think, Guru Sahib articulates is Ekunkar, that never changes. It's always there. How do I balance doing with experiencing? Doing with experiencing. Right? Experiencing is when you just let go. Doing is when there's active. And experiencing is when you absorb. You absorb the sunlight. You're not, you go out to be in the sunlight, and then you just let go and absorb the sunlight, let it affect you. What will happen to me when I die?
Yeah, the question of death, or why death comes, what happens after death, the fear of death, is something that's quite a common eternal question that comes up.
Yeah, well, it is. We're living in this COVID situation where even if we don't fear for ourselves, there is a tremendous acknowledgement that the loved ones around us, there is suffering, and we see that. So it's very much on everyone's mind.
Here's a very interesting one. How is the soul made?
The light.
You're going to take that one.
Well, I think in part of it is Bhagat Kabirji has a beautiful line that we are part of that one ansh, right? I think it is in one of the slides. We'll cover that.
Yes, do I have control? So I call it not just an eternal question, a perennial question. So, I will give a little bit of, through thinking about that question, I want to give a little background. So I have been with Sikhi, of course, for this is the second decade, so I don't know, 14, 15 years. But, way in my 20s, that adolescence/20s Inni Penji was referring to, we would get together in like Gurbani discussions and take either a particular Bani or particular questions. And, always going through, probably the majority, 90% of the discussions would end with a question about this particular, do I have, if everything is in hukam, then what am I doing? I can just sit and relax, and Vaheguru has laid it all out for me. I don't have to do any effort. So do I have to do effort? Do I have the capacity to control, or is everything in Vaheguru's hukam? That perennial question, we did this for many years. Every year, every Gurbani meeting, that would be the question that would pop up. And to this day, it's an eternal question. And as we said, eternal questions, the answers may change, the situations in which we are may have a different perspective on the answers, but the questions will remain eternal.
So Inderpreet, let's look at the next slide, which is, we've seen what our eternal questions are, what the participants have put in there. But what were the eternal questions which the yogis had, the Siddhs had? Let's put those up. I'd love to see those.
Maybe just a couple, no? Actually, no.
Oh, no. So now we didn't want to overwhelm you, but we wanted to show you that they had 88 questions. And these are the sets, the proven ones, right? So all their questions are coming from that place of great intellect. 88 now. I'm not going to be able to go through 88. Focus only on 5, which we've put together on the next slide, right? Inderpreet, the ones which we are going to focus on.
I was just switching back and forth between the two slides. Some of the topics that they came up with, like about death, it's definitely been covered. Where does the soul come from? That's somehow covered. Like, what is the origin? Where is Nam obtained? So it's very similar. These are, as Inni Penji is saying, and they have these questions as well. But we will go over a few.
some of the eternal questions, though we will go over 5, but now keeping in mind, these were the Siddhs, the elevated beings. And if you thought that it's only the Siddhs that ask these questions, no, these are very much the questions of the philosophers of our time, of Plato, Aristotle, Tolstoy. These are their questions. So these are not just restricted to the Siddhs. And if you think they're restricted just to us, no, these are truly the universal questions. So origin, yes, where did we come from? That was that soul question, how to cross over the death, cross the world ocean, fear of death, all that is there. So let's, Inderpreet, begin with the first one. I believe you're taking the first one, the origin.
Yeah, I think let's start on that. So,
yeah,
ever since I have started delving into Gurbani or Sikh affairs, I've come to the realization that all through my childhood as well, this question about how did the world get created has been in our schools. Some of you may, like me, have gone through Catholic school, and we were not forced, but we had to read the books of the Bible. Or if you are brought up in India, all around there's always stories rotating around the Hindu context of where the world came from. And I never studied any like Hindu philosophy, etc. But I knew that it was Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Those are the 3 things. In the Semitic faiths, this is a big, even a controversy within the Christian faith, Catholic versus others, but others as well. But the story is very common between all the 3 faiths. God created the world out of nothing. It took 7 days. Some have the day of rest is Saturday versus Friday versus Sunday, which is also very interesting and unique. But the creation of life humans began with the story of Adam and Eve. So obviously I'm not going to get into all of the details. However, this is definitely an eternal question outside of the, kind of the Aryan faiths, Hindu, Buddhist faith, Jain, and it is something I think in the Sikh context is very unique, is what the answer comes. In the Hindu case, but back to the Christian case. So Adam and Eve were the first humans. The different 7 days also created all of the animals and the nature, etc. But implication in all 3 is that the humans were supreme, and they were the domain of animals and the world were going to be under the human power. So there's a little bit of connotation over there, and I wanted to make that specific point because we'll come to that later. So but now what's going on, because 7 days, I mean, that doesn't match with science and what we know from a scientific perspective. So even story is being interpreted now, it's really evolution, it's really intelligent design. So again, questions remain, but the answers and the way that those are answered are changing. In the Hindu context, there was nothingness, and there was literally a story that Vishnu was in the lap of nothingness. Out of his navel came a lotus, and out of the lotus he created Brahma. Brahma was the creator of the world. And I don't know if you have ever heard this story, but Brahma created the world, and as a result created the different castes. So from the head came the Brahmin, from the arms came the Kshatris, and etc., right? And the feet, of course, were the lowest of the caste of individuals, which were the Sudras or the untouchables, etc. So once that got created, of course, there's a cyclic idea in the Hindu faiths as well. Vishnu sustains. So the Vishnu, who was the initial creator of the creator, that persona is the one that sustains. Shiva is the one that destroys, and it just continues on. So what's the implication here, right? In the implication of the Semitic faiths, Adam and Eve, they took over the world and nature and animals. In this case, there was a strata in society. The implication of the answer of the origin is there's a strata in society and people are stuck where they are. So just a quick covering of that, but what was the question that the yogis asked? So the Sidh Gosti presents a very simple question, because not like what was the technique, etc. What are your views? They also, in my mind, are acknowledging that, oh yeah, there's different views of what origin is and what the implication is. So ad ko kavan vichar kathiyale arvaso. And if you will notice, as you're going through Sidh Gosti, when the yogis ask the question, when the Siddhs ask the question, they kind of imply their view of the answer within it itself. I'd already mentioned to you about the sun idea, the nothingness or profoundness idea. So it says, what is your view, they're presenting to the guru, of the origin, and where did that sun, where did it really reside? Because in their minds already, they are assuming that origin came from the nothingness, right? And it is one who is enlightened. Do we want to know your views on origin? We want to also know that who is realized, who can even know what or has the right views on origin. And in their worldview, in order for someone to be considered enlightened, they had to have an external insignia. Okay, this definitely relates to the head. Based on how someone looks, one immediately says, oh, atta bahut poncho hai banda, just by the looks, not by the thoughts. So they're right there in presenting their question. Guru Sahib has so much material to counter them with, from Guru Sahib's perspective. So again, everyone has a worldview on what is origin and creation from the religious context, scientific context. In the context of Sidh Gosti, the Siddhs are asking Guru Sahib, what is your view? Just simple, open-ended question. One would think, right, or they would maybe expect that there would be some long, elaborate story of how creation occurred. But Guru Sahib answers it very, like, to the point and interestingly. And this is what mesmerizes me about both Sidh Gosti and Guru Nanak's way of Guru Nanak's worldview. And he says, Ad ko bismad bichar kathiyale. Says, guys, there's many stories about how creation happened, what origin is. All I can explain to you, it was wah. It was just amazing. It was wondrous. It was indescribable. Sun nirantar vasliya. Again, he answers with their language, right, of the idea of sun. So this unattributed, this profound, like nothingness, it is actually everywhere. Vaheguru is the creator. Vaheguru is part of creation. And Vaheguru is constantly, Ikonkar is constantly involved with creation. I said those three specific things because I want to relate to, if you were a part of like the in-person Siddha, you all maybe do know or don't know that we cover Asakivar in Siddha as well. And in Mool Mantar, in Asakivar, here in Sidh Gosti, there's also another Bani Maru Mahla Panjwa, Maru Mahla Pehla, Guru Nanak's view of creation. So it's been covered very extensively, and all answers lead to this very same form of answer that Guru Sahib is presenting to the Siddhs, is that it's Bismad, it's all in Hukam, right? And, you know, good, this is my personal view, and I would like others, people's views as well, is that the fact that Guru Sahib doesn't establish a very specific how creation took place. Creation is a constant, it was created by Ikonkar, and the world and universe is constantly changing, gives us as Sikhs who believe or who submit to Guru Nanak's worldview a much broader perspective of life. We shouldn't think that we are the ones that control the world. We have no concept of hierarchy within a human structure. But in the other faiths, that those, because of the origin stories, there are implications to the attitude of life. And over here, Guru Sahib is saying the attitude of life should be Vah. should be everything about, everything is in hukam. Where is my place in that hukam? And an insignia, an external like insignia to say that someone is realized is actually nothing external. It's all inside. If your mind is in tune with the ikonkar, that is the pose. So kalpat mudra gur gyan bichar liye katkat sacha sarabjiya. Understanding and truly feeling that the all beings are part of ikonkar, that is the insignia of enlightenment. So they, you know, I can just see the conversation going on between the yogis and Guru Nanak. They're waiting for like this big elaborate story, and he just boom. It's all about Vismat, guys. Just chill out and don't get caught up in your hysterics and gymnastics and physical, you know, like mathematical equations of how the world may have come. So in conclusion, right, all of these concluded, creation was in hukam. Api ne aap sajyo, api ne rachyo now. This is from Asakiwar. Creation was a result of hukam. And through the Guru, one understands that and has the attitude to remain in awe of that hukam, that idea of humility of hukam. And that is where the beauty of life is that if we can have this attitude of understanding origin to be wondrous, implication is that our life can be wondrous as well. And it is really our choice as to how much we move forward with it, which is what we want to cover over here. In like, for each of these questions, we'll cover, okay, these are the principles that are being covered, but so what? How do we apply that in our lives? And so again, already covered, creation is Vismad, Ikonkar is present in all. And if one has an attitude of contentment, peace, and balance, that is really the external insignia one really, there is no external insignia. That is the internal sign that, okay, Ponchaya Banda hai, and not any physical space like out in the Himalayas. There's no physical form of clothing. There's no mudra meant to be rings, right? So rings that you, like, you know, Super Bowl rings that you show to everyone that Mekkidre Ponchaya. Guru Sahib is not as interested in that as the sign, but that as maybe tools, or not sorry tools, but more like articles that a community can utilize. So application is focus on the here and now. We're going to talk about death, so things do happen from that perspective. Birth obviously happens. Why, how, when it all started are questions, but Guru Sahib's answer to those are, in my view, let's focus on the here and now, and how can we be as broad today. The way to do that, the Ikonkar in everyone, right? The Ikonkar in everyone, and I may take it further, in everything as well. So that attitude of the world, the universe is something is a gift to us, and therefore something to take care of, automatically implies the idea of fighting climate change, you know, being cognizant of, you know, the consumptions that we do in our lives, etc. I think I'll stop over there, and if we have, you know, we'll give quite a bit, like 3 to 4 minutes of reflection, questions, or anything like that. Looks like someone, Manat Kaur, has asked me directly. So Guru Sahib's answer doesn't really conflict with rational scientific understanding the way the Christian philosophy of 7 days would. I tend to agree with that. Now, that doesn't mean that Guru Sahib is saying that all things, at the end, Guru Sahib has, in my view, described that, hey, this is indescribable. Humans, with our capacity, scientific capacity, will try to get to the point to realize. I don't think Guru Sahib has said that is, he doesn't discourage that, but yes, there's the conflict of this whole science versus spirituality, science versus religion, these perennial questions and these eternal questions that are plaguing academic institutions and governments, etc. I think the Sikhs, through Guru Nanak's point of view, would have a different view of that. Inni, do you have any?
Right. Well, we don't really get involved too much. There's an acceptance, and while you were talking about Vismad, bar, and there's the beautiful pori that is. It's to be in that wondrous state. So for us is, how can we be in that wondrous state where we accept and look at everything that is happening around us, even the things which we call as destruction, to be in that state. So that is that balance that, which was the third point. To have attained peace and balance is a state of enlightenment, when you can be in that state of dismad, that wonder, whether something per us is good or something per us is destructive. That's the sign of enlightenment. Would Inderpreet, would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. I think that'll be fair, and not just fair. I think that's the point. Guru Sahib's attitude for these type of eternal questions, I think, is different from, we are bombarded with where we live in, right? In society, whether it's the West or the East, right? And the thing that we come out as we delve and make that connection to Bani deeper and deeper is the uniqueness of it, and where other ideas and other may impact us, may influence us, but it's really to get the Sikh culture, Nam culture perspective right. It's an engagement with Bani that helps us do that.
Okay. I think the toughest one, the application, is to see Ek Onkar in everyone and in everything. And that's that repeated, constant, eternal drumming inside. See the one, see the one, see the one in all. And that requires great humility. Or that feeling, well, I definitely cannot be in that there is no way that Ant and I have the same right, and very much so. It is when that nimrata or humility enters, that your place in this universe and the place of the ant is just about the same, because they are created by the Creator. In that, it's then you begin to walk differently. You begin to think maybe a tad bit differently. And you think, where is this I coming from? This I is not so strong. I am, when a part of me is that the Creator has created both of us in that light, and with that frame, then why am I so arrogant? Why do I feel that I have more space in this world? Why do I demand that? And these are the subtle things which enter as you begin to think or align your consciousness with what is around you, you are aware of, that Vismad moment. So should we continue to the next question, because I don't see there are any more questions in there, or would you like to continue, Inderpreet, with this one?
No,
something else? No?
I think so. We've established Guru Nanak's point of view of origin. Mm-hmm. Now I think is a very pertinent question, which you're going to now cover, is about life. So how do you live that?
Right. How to cross the world ocean. I mean, this phrase comes so often in Bani, and so let's try and break it down. What it really means. Many times it's called the dreadful ocean. However, this dreadful is not the physical ocean like which we are talking about. It's not this ocean with the waves and the fiery waves, and there's a shore. Yes, there's no this shore or that shore in this dreadful ocean. Therefore, how do we cross it? We cannot cross it physically. It has to be a different way of crossing this world ocean. So how do we do that? It is actually when we go within. And going within is pretty scary, let me tell you that. And there's an ocean within all of us. And how do we cross that ocean? How do we first enter that ocean? One way is the only way. It is when you cross it, when your intelligence, where your understanding is guided by an inner light or a wisdom which comes from not your wisdom, from a higher power or something which you believe in. I mean, while we say higher power and we say Vaheguru, the people have given names to this higher power in many different names. So whatever that is, so that's when you cross over to the other shore. That means you have lived, you know how to live, you know how to sail, you know how to do those things. And it is that state of that infinite wisdom, the realization. The ultimate test is actually, it is when there's a realization of your origin. Now, this origin is with a capital O. This, when you recognize yourself, when you recognize where you come from, what it is. So a practical way, there's also a practical element. It's just not philosophical. The practical way is, how can you become successful in life? How can we in this world in a manner that is deemed successful, not monetarily? It is deemed successful in the way of your being, of your essence, is that living in that essence. So yes, what are the waves? The lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego. These are the waves that enter us. There's an onslaught of it constantly, which is happening. And the question is, how do you calm these waves down? How do you slow them down? They are always going to be present, but then you have the ability, when you put in the effort, to slow them down, and eventually it becomes calmer. And that's that stage where you enter your Sahaj nature. It is, if you can imagine yourselves on a beautiful lake, and where the reflection outside, the trees are reflecting on the lake, and there is no difference between what you see around you and what the reflection of the lake is. It's absolutely still. That's that stillness that enters, and therefore you act from that place. Next slide, please. So, but how does Guru Sahib tell us? What was the question of the yogis? What did they have? And they said that this, one of the Siddhs, which is a Charpat, and the name is there. Charpat, the Siddh says, how can one cross over? What he is saying is, how can one live an elevated life, not a life of mere existence? Remember who these people are who are asking the question. So they're not going to ask the question, okay, how do I get an A in my exam? Or how do I get the next car? Or how do I, get my marriage partner or whatever. These are not their questions. Their questions are, we know who's asking. So of a different capacity. And it is, what answer can be offered to someone who asks and knows at the same time? I want you to focus on the way Guru Sahib is answering that. There's much to learn in this. He's acknowledging that the Siddhs already know the answer. There's an acknowledgement that per their doctrine, per their system, they already have the answer to this question. And he's also acknowledging that per them, they've already crossed over. That's why they're up on the mountaintop. That's why they are up there, because they are the proven ones. So there's no really point in arguing about that. So how can I argue with you who already know, who is fully established in their point of view? There's no point in having this argument. So think about the way this dialogue is taking place. What are our understandings on that? What is it telling us when we know somebody's so entrenched in their point of view? So when you say, I understand that, it lowers the temperature down on the other person. And maybe there's an opening for them to really hear what you are saying. So let's see, go on to next, see how Guru Sahib replies to that question. I know this Pauri has been covered multiple times in multiple sessions. And in the last session, Jasprit Kaur touched on it. But I want to break it down in another way. So it's just like the lotus, which resides in the area, which we classify as dirty. Remember, we always say the lotus is in the pond, and underneath there is a great deal of filth that is happening there. But the lotus still blooms. Similarly, the duck is, but it's not submerged in it. Both live in the water, but do not get wet. They do not allow the water to change or affect their inherent nature. So when we allow, who are we? We have that jyot within us. We are the spark of the divine light. But what we have done, what I have done, I don't know what I can say about we, what I have done, I have allowed the world, whatever's happening around me, to affect me. So much so that I have forgotten my inherent nature, that I am a spark of divine light. So what does this mean? Is that we've got to figure out how to live in this world, how to be in the world, but not be of the world. What does that mean? How do we do that? So let's come to the next slide. And please feel free to add, put your questions in the chat, because this is more of a conversation. This is, while yes, there's information being imparted, it's always richer when there is a flow. And we do have the time, we've allocated time, so we are to put those there. So how can we apply the analogy of the lotus and the duck to our lives? What can we take away from this interactions? I think the first thing is we're all about participating in life and not detaching ourselves from life completely. So let's put that idea out about us retreating from the world. This for me has been really a challenge. Retreating for the world is something which I really wrestle with to this day. And when when Sidh Gosti was working on me, it was, no, you've got to be very much part of the world. But that's the physical part, right? Retreating to the world and being on the mountaintop. But there's another type of retreating. And that retreating means disengaging. It is when you choose not to get involved and that attitude enters you. Who cares? It doesn't concern me. So why should I bother? When that attitude enters our consciousness, that is something we need to be careful about, because that is actually detaching, being disengaged. Well, the world is burning, so what? That's exactly what the Siddhs were saying. The world was burning down below, but we are up here. Yes, we've sent our people below to look after them, but we're not going to be touched by them. Yes, there is hunger, there is poverty, there is all sorts of things happening, climate change, there are Black Lives Matter, farmers' protests, all happening. Can we afford to sit back and say, it doesn't concern us? Or do we engage in a productive way? Having said all that, it's easier said than done, because there's a reality check that there are all sorts of influences that affect our lives, and there is times when we can get quite negative, when I can get quite negative, because there are circumstances in our lives that do that. And this is that we go through the seesaw of emotions. Let's recognize that. I've had to recognize that I go through those that seesaw of emotions. And then what happens because of that? I mean, why is that? Let's pause and think, why does that happen? Is because we have not spent time working to figure out the purpose of our life. And it's when we haven't figured out a purpose of our lives, we get swayed. So what do we have to do? Develop a purpose of life. This is what Guru Sahib is telling us, is enlightening us, is guiding us, that, figure out a purpose of your life on the personal level, on the community level. also, if you have decided to be a Sikh, if you choose to be that, then figure out what is your place in that Panthic journey. And when we know how to live life, we are driven then by the choices we make. And therefore the clarity comes in and we are driven by that purpose. You know, we spent about 24 years or so figuring out what our careers are, and we put a great deal of effort in that. But we have yet to figure out, do we put that enough time within ourselves figuring out what is the purpose of our life? Because once we figure that out, maybe we will know how to participate in life. So what is the recap in this section for me, and maybe for us at the larger thing, that the Siddhs believed in not participating in life, that to be this pure and to be able to attain whatever these siddhis, these miraculous powers were, and to live for an extensive amount of time was not participating. And Guru Sahib is saying, no, participate in life. Be very much a part of the world. And the Siddhs believe that this world is a source of pain and sorrow. So therefore they abandon this world. Guru Sahib is saying, no, live in this world, but stay aloof. Aloof in the sense, rise above it. Rise above what you see, like a lotus dust spreading its fragrance, like a duck sails. Don't let it affect you, but do what is needed and blossom and bloom and spread that fragrance. It also means, what that means actually is, how do you do that? How do you blossom and bloom without being affected in this world? Is when you can pull yourself away from the hopes and the expectations. When there's a reward, well, I'm going to be doing this, and there's an expectation that there is going to be a reward. When you pull that aside, maybe then we can live like that, though it's really tough. I mean, you know, because we are so goal-oriented and saying, okay, what is the reward at the end of it? You know, I'm going to be the next CEO. I'm going to be the next VP. I'm going to be, you know, have the next, $5 million house. We are so goal-oriented. I want to do this for that. When we can just do the things without that expectation of that result and be tied to it. So if we don't get that, then we are crushed or we are joyous. That's that journey. That's what is being said to me. Inderpreet, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would try to reiterate the spread the fragrance, right? It's because people, not just the Siddhs, do get to those type of levels, but in the Bani itself, Guru Sahib pointed to the fact that those that reach that level and share it with others is
right.
Daso. I'm really in awe of those type of people. So as an indication that those are the type of people we need to grow up as, not individualized, but more have this responsibility of sharing. And this is where, in my mind, the Sikh ideal of seva emanates from. Is there's a responsibility for the goal of life is not an individual goal. The goal of life is a collective goal because of that ikonkar within everyone, see ikonkar within everyone.
Right. And that's why the Siddhs were up on the mountaintop, right? They didn't want to deal with the daily sufferings of the people. Yeah. And even though they had this wisdom and the knowledge, and that's what Guru Sahib was saying, you have this wisdom, you have this knowledge, come down and share it with everyone else. Don't just be up there. So whatever wisdom and knowledge that you have, share it. Spread that knowledge. Yeah. And this is how you cross the world ocean. It is when you are centered, when you are able to, your guidance comes from a principle of wisdom, when there is a guiding light within you, when you are not so swayed by the ups and downs of life, that is when you cross the world ocean. And as those qualities where you are not prone to these ups and downs of emotions, that you will be able to cross the world ocean. you will be able to live a life which is centered, which you will be able to serve from that place, that wisdom. So we move on to the next section, Inderpreet.
Yeah, I think so. Let's so we kind of spoke about the origin, then life itself, and interesting questions from the yogis. This is I get a little bit mesmerized by this analogy, so we decided to put it in there. But this is going to be talking about the difficulties of life. How does one deal with the difficulties of life? So the yogis are asking, how is one to eat iron without teeth? Again, their language, but Guru Sahib obviously understands it, knows it. And there are other places in Gurbani where this metaphor does show up, but it's very concentrated in Sidh Gosti itself. Another form of that question that they ask, so this is like two different sections of Sidh Gosti, is how is one to eat iron with teeth of wax, right? The implication being, again, eating of iron is a difficult thing. And what is the eating of iron? It is acting in life. It is living of life and the difficult situations of life. And for the Siddhs, from their worldview, this is, as Panji already covered in the crossing of the world ocean, it's something to be kind of won. It's a battle that they have won against the distractions of life. But their method of winning this battle of the distractions, quote unquote, or maya of life is through isolation, but also very specific techniques of their strength of Hatha Yoga, right? So in that context, this metaphor comes. But it does remain, the iron itself remains a metaphor for difficult or undefeatable world. We know that it's not really physical. When difficulties approach us in life, there may be ailments that hit, from a disease or from a physical difficulties of life. But it's really at the relationship level type of difficulties. And Benji already mentioned career type of aspirations and difficulties, right? They go hand in hand. When expectations are not met, that's when sadness kicks in, right? So really, how do you fight that balance between, are we saying don't even aspire to be anything great, even in the societal realms or in political realms? No, Sikhs need to excel in all aspects of life. But how do you, what is the attitude of life with which one must be able to get to those? So the point on this slide is that the Siddhs are coming from the perspective that humans, without the techniques we have or without our worldview, are considered to be weak, and they will not be able to quote unquote win over this life. So they have asked in a couple of pauris, and as usual, as I had mentioned, in asking of their question, they already have a perspective because they believe that they have won over this life. So when they talk about overcoming expectation and desires, then they ask specifically, oh, how can you eat iron with teeth? Obviously, it's by overcoming expectation and desires, one can eat iron with no teeth. So kit bid asa mansa khai, kit bid jot nirantar pai. So we have established, right, Guru Nanak's idea that the divine light is within. So how does one realize that divine light? How can one overcome expectations? How can you eat iron without teeth? Give us that reflection, right? They're asking Guru Sahib, I keep saying, like question after question, but also establishing their answer within the question itself. And then another pori later, and this is in the context of Home or Grahast Jivan, they talk about this question of man ke dant, so teeth of wax. How can iron be chewed? It's difficult to live in a life of a householder and a life of an ascetic, right? How do you balance that? The Grist Udasi idea, they understood, as Guru Sahib had explained to them already, but they want to ask still on them. That's really difficult to do. How do you eliminate this pride? What is the kurak? What is the thing that you have to eat in order to eliminate the pride? Giving the answer itself that, oh, it's a pride problem, it's a home problem, it's an I-ness problem. The way they ask the questions always, kind of enamors me as well. Based on how Panji explained, they already know, they've already crossed the world ocean, but they still want to ask. Guru Sahib, then okay, ठीक है, we'll talk to you about it. I'll give you some specifics, but I'll give you the broader idea as well. So in the answer to that, which was in 2019, he brings up this idea, which may or may not have been covered in the idea from a yoga and Maya perspective, is by destroying the three qualities. So tre gun, three guns, three virtues or three qualities. You can eat iron, and the liberation that you're seeking, that comes from the one who is able to liberate, which is Ekankar itself. So, and the three qualities is basically the qualities that consist of what is considered in kind of the yogic language of Maya, and is Sat, Raj, and Tam. So Sato, Rajo, Tamo. You may hear this reference in lots of other places. In the problem of the human life, Guru Sahib establishes is that Maya is not something to be shunned or something to be destroyed. Maya is also within the hukam of Vaheguru. It is not to be affected by Maya, or having the ability to engage with Maya so that Maya is controlled by the individual rather than the Maya controlling the individual. So this is the concept that will come over and over again. Guru Sahib explains it with their specific terminology. And in the second variation of that question is the same thing, but he presents a very interesting attitude of life. He's basically saying, and these are my words, says, guys, no one said life will be easy, right? So, but it's the attitude. He says, Jag karadam manmukh gawar. If there's no guru inspiration behind your life, then one will perceive life, one will perceive the world as being very, very difficult. World and all actions we presented is all within hukam of Vaheguru. So are we trying to fight the hukam of Vaheguru by getting away from the world? So he says it doesn't make sense. It's the manmukh, it's the self-centered, who has not been able to control pride, who has not been able to control these tragun. They have an obvious attitude that life is difficult, we got to run away from it. But the one who is Gurmukh, and you've gone through that contrast, has an attitude of life, that life is worth celebrating, and engage with all aspects of that life. But that comes how? That comes by earning Shabad. So Shabad kamaiye khaiye sar. So the difficulties of life are able, the questions should be obvious that you will have is, what does earning Shabad really mean? It's not like a transaction that I would put something in and I would earn it. To be honest, it actually is. It's the amount of time that we can spend with an element of kirpa and grace to engage with the Shabad. Understanding Guru Nanak's worldview, which is contained within the Guru Granth Sahib, understanding the Sikh worldview, which emanates from the Guru Granth Sahib, as best as we can approach it through our individual learning, but through the community and the resources that we have available in the community. The closer the relationship with Shabad gives us and develops our attitude of how to eat iron, quote unquote, to tackle the difficulties of life. But if this realization that Ekankar is within all, Ekankar is outside as well as inside, so there's no distinguishing factor here. That is really the way that the engaging with the Shabad leads to a relationship with the Satguru. Nanak agan mare Satgur ke pane. So no one said it would be difficult, number one, but the difficulty is in itself an acceptance of the hukum. So everything that happens in life is part of hukum, though there may be difficult episodes in our life. And the examples that I've myself have experienced is with, of course, with career, family, even organizations that I volunteer for. There's difficult situations that we get to. At the larger, there's pontic difficulties through our history and that we're going through right now. In the nation state have difficult decisions that they have to make. In at least my personal life, and what as a takeaway we would like to submit is that there have been times where the Shabad has come to the rescue, really, and literally Shabad. One of the examples Inni and I were talking in the history of the Singh Sabha movement, there was a real fundamental difficulty of how the Darbar Sahib was being organized. The quote-unquote pujaris of the time would literally set a separate time for when the lower caste known as or Dalits would be allowed to even go inside the Darbar Sahib and matha teke, engage with the Shabad. There was literally a kind of curfew hours, and where the upper caste, lower caste issues had all been, we're talking about 100+ years ago. But obviously the realization was coming that this doesn't fly with our Gurmat and Guru's idea of equality. Quarrels, etc., took place, and someone suggested, let's ask the Guru. Let's literally do a hukam and see what Guru's answer is. And on that day, the answer or the Shabad that came, long story short, what talked about the divine light being the same in all, and it was so clear and so simple that the pujaris were like struck and like, oh my goodness, the Guru has spoken to us, and the difficulty of the I-ness and the ego and the pride of this kind of distinction that we had put into society for our own was realized. And the story goes that they basically let go of the control of the Darbar Sahib, and then it was like a precursor to the Gurdwara reform movement. So this is an episode in Sikh history that a result came literally from engaging with the Shabad. So I take that from here, that any level of difficulties in life, there are many stories that you will hear within your families and in your friend circles that when such and such difficulty arose, we went to Gurdwara, or we went to our house Guru Granth Sahib, and took the hukam, engaged with the Bani, reflected on the Bani, did the ardas, and really there's no magic within that, but it's allowing the mind to open up to an inspiration that we know is divine wisdom, that we accept as divine wisdom, gives us that inner strength to pursue. So again, no one said it's going to be easy, is really Guru Sahib's answer. So world will become difficult. The attitude of life will be difficult, hard, and I need to give up for those that don't work and chisel the divineness within them. Right? When the divineness within them, which is all sovereign and all confidence, is covered by Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Hankar, then that weakness that the yogis think exists within, like inherent within humans, which Guru Sahib is saying is not inherent within us. And within us is strength. We just need to practice that strength, and we have the Shabad to help us through that. So it's the freedom from bondage of indulgence. That again, the indulgence of those pujaris in the Gurdwara was their pride. Look, we are superior. We are the ones who control the purses of the Darbar Sahib, right? And that indulgence, Shabad is the one that basically erased it. Anxiety of life. What will I be perceived as in my career? Will I be able to achieve? quote unquote success, that anxiety ends when there's focus on and the acceptance of hukum. I will try my best. Success or failure is in the hands of the Guru. This was an attitude of the Sikhs of the past used to say. Asita kam karna hai, baki sare Guru de haath vich. You know, you've heard that terminology. I think that's the kind of principles that Guru Sahib is establishing to answer this question. And the application, how do we do it, is absolutely connect with the Guru Shabad. I want to reiterate what I started with, that this won't happen individually. You cannot confront challenges all by yourself. Yes, the Guru is Hazar Nazar, always with you, but there are the support of like-minded individuals that will be required in this journey. So no one said it was going to be easy. It is difficult, but Guru Sahib has provided resources primarily in the wisdom of the Guru Shabad to help us interpret it for ourselves and tackle those type of challenges. Inni, would you like to say something else?
Yeah, you had, and it's come here again, but you had said something really interesting in one of the Sikhi. You have to Shabad Kamana, you have to earn the Shabad. So walk us through that. What does that mean, earning?
Yeah, earning, if you think about it from like the monetary perspective, you start with little, and then you do some investment, and then it's supposed to grow, right? But putting that aside, those monetary metaphor or like analogies may not be consequential to people who are still students or younger, or who don't think that way. But I think really and practically for me, it's really the level of engagement that you have with Gurbani. For some, it could be very solitary, engaging, even if it's just a repetition of the Mool Mantar, etc. But many people will go beyond that, and they'll do discourse and discussion, like the Gurbani workshops that I was talking about that we used to do collectively. Right? There's an engagement and an earning and an effort being put in. Some people really connect with Gurbani in the Kirtan form, right? So maybe that has an impact. I have had many members of my circle that would share with me the experience they have of sitting in a Gurdwara, in a Sangat, listening to a Shabad, and they get one or two lines of that Shabad ingrained with that in the Rag tune. That's another level. And then another level is not just Shabad, but also Seva. When Sangat collects together, again, Sangat in the broader sense, with support of when the like-minded get together to do something, either a activist type of engagement or a real seva, feeding or any other type of engagement, the motivation and the mahal of that is with either Shabad or Waheguru or Nam or something that's an inspiration behind it. So that's also Shabad Kaman in my world, in my sense. But it is what does Shabad do with the individual? How does an individual connect with the Shabad? Is really can take many forms of earning.
So it's basically a connection, constant connection. Is how do you have that connection, which was in the hukum this morning. Also, what Guru Sahib was saying, may that connection, may that never leave me. May I always be connected to that, exactly. For that Nam, right? Because the world is difficult, and it's how do we conquer that world? Mm-hmm. This is,
the conquer of the world, is obviously in the context of sorrow. Usually, the difficulties are concept of sorrow. Guru Sahib over here has established when indulgence also goes to the other extreme, right, of extreme joy, of just total aloofness, that there's no connection with the world. So he says, let Shabad keep that balance between And we all know Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib's Bani, right? Jo na dukh mein dukh nahi mane. And sukh sane kanchan mati mane. So both dukh and sukh can go to extremes. Guru Sahib saying, center yourself so that those don't impact you as much.
So it's actually acceptance of the hukum that everything is happening in the raza, in the command, in this capital C command, and therefore live in that space, in that. Yeah. I have a question, which if we are done with Inderpreet, if you want to wrap up this one, because I do have a question before we go to the next one, which deals with the question of creation, the purpose of creation. And if I may be so bold to do it now, before we get to the end. And it was sent directly. So it was, I want to say that, did gurus, the purpose of creation by the creator versus the purpose of life, does the creator create for the purpose of creating worshippers? And I smile because this was a question which was posed to me when I was at the Bhai Veer Singh Sadan many years ago by a young man, and who said, God must be very greedy. And I said, how so? He said, because all what God wants you to do is to praise him. So it's in that of that. This could be akin to artists, influencers creating for the purpose of receiving fans. So equating fans and worshippers, like so simply for the sake of artistic expression. Does the creator ever even want to be known, or are we on an unattainable pursuit of identifying our origin? I'm curious as an artist, what do you think there? Artists that do not want to be known. Yeah. Like you to answer that, and maybe I will take a stab at it as well, Inderpreet.
This is definitely a question that comes up a lot, right? This is,
right.
What did Vaheguru create us for the purpose of praising Vaheguru? And I'll be honest, I mean, I don't have any quick, like Guru Nanak would present, like a bold answer. What I just go back to in that case is that I've come to understand that creation and creator are actually one and the same. So I always go back to the Asa ki Varna. Api ne aap sajyo, api ne rachyo now, toi kudrat sajye kar asan dikto chao. So it is not us as humans. If we consider us as humans separate from the Ikonkar, then yeah, there's that, the humans have to praise the Ikonkar. I think it was probably Professor Pooling, if not maybe Principal Teja Singh, also presented it as like, become so beautiful as the Ikonkar will praise the person, the human. So it's become essentially, I think the goal is to be the best that we can, which is the virtues of Ikonkar and Vaheguru. Not, and that when in Gurbani the word praise comes, I always interpret that to be not just a simple singing of a shabad, which is praise. It's not just repetition of a Mool Mantar or Gur Mantar, etc. It's really praise of Ikonkar is Jaisa Hari Hoy, like do the kind of things, have actions in life that are imbued with what virtues of Ikonkar are. So I don't see that anywhere maybe Guru Sahib has established that the purpose of life was to praise. Although he does say that Avar kite nakam mil saal sangat paj keval naam, right? Those type of terminologies, I think it's a little bit, interpreting it more broadly helps me to come to grips with what was really the purpose over here.
Right. I think for me it is, when to be able to see when the question comes within, like, what is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of my existence? And when you go deep within and you look around, And at that moment, when you begin to recognize you're part of the larger creation and there's beauty all over, and when you can see the beauty in creation and in the creation, when I say creation, yes, nature is very easy to see that beauty because we're used to that. But when you see the beauty in the individual and you say, you are beautiful, that to me is that recognition that you're seeing something in that individual that is part of a larger vastness, that beauty of that larger vastness. And you recognize that and you acknowledge that. And if you see that in that individual, you see that if I can see that, maybe I want someone else to see that in me. That we are beautiful, we are divine, but can we see it? And this whole idea of praise and wanting to be known. The second part of the question is, do you want to be known? And that's a struggle because I know Paisa Paivir Singh Ji has also written, all he wanted in life was just to be unknown, because that's that stage of utter humility where it enters you, because when you recognize that actually what you have, nothing is yours. It's all a part of that one. You've been graced with so much, and there's nothing you can give. All there. You are part of the universe. You're part of creation. So who exactly are you giving to? You're actually giving to the creator? No, it's part of that cycle. So we can delve more into it, but let's go to the next one, which I believe it was, Inderpreet.
Really quickly on two things. So this analogy of artist and art is definitely very apt, because this comes in Gurbani. In the description of the origin or creation, the analogy has come that artist and art are exactly the same.
Yeah.
That is the uniqueness of Guru Nanak's worldview of creation. And it is definitely possible to identify. So he said, like the question was, is it unattainable pursuit? It is definitely possible, but there is not a catch, but yeah, it's a catalyst that will be needed for that realization. And this Gur Prasad, there is Gur Prasadi Janya. Is always comes over in the mind. It's capable of doing it. We are capable of identifying, but we need the guru as the inspiration.
We cannot, droplets, we experience droplets, we get glimpses, and that keeps us going on this journey to attain the unattainable. So thank you. That was Gurpreet Singh, you're very kind. He said that was amazing. We will continue to talk about something which is how to overcome the fear of death. Yes, because honestly, why is this so important? Because I don't believe there's any single individual that this is not going to happen to. Death is going to happen to all of us. And so the question becomes, we fear it because we've been conditioned to think of it as this really dark thing, and it's going to snatch us away. And forever we are going to be without our loved ones. And there's going to be this tremendous void. And particularly right now with what is going around us, this is very much real. Some of us can intellectualize death to a certain extent, but when it happens to our near and dear ones, the grief and the sorrow that overcomes us, enters us, is unimaginable. I have a dear friend who's going, and a young researcher. I call her my friend, but she is a young researcher who's going through a very difficult time, and death is very much hovering around her. And to watch her grief is very real. So how do you overcome this fear of death? And there are levels of it, death at one level of losing, death of what the person is suffering, and death of, and then there is that tremendous void that you feel that you're going to feel. The healthy way, I think, is to acknowledge our fears, our weaknesses, and then to seek the Guru's guidance. How do we deal with this? How do we overcome, maybe a strong word, but show us the way. how to do this. But interestingly enough, this question which we are dealing with about the fear of death, which is very real for us, was also the question of the Siddhs. So in the Inderpreet, we move to this next slide, and you will see they are asking how to overcome the fear of death. But in this slide and the next slide, and I want to get to it, there's quite a bit of the technical yogic questions. So what does this moon remaining in the house of snow mean? One understanding is moon is a symbol of calmness, right? By that, the Siddhs mean that how can one remain cool and anxiety-free? Now, the house of snow is where our consciousness is absorbed in the divine, and it stays connected and is not affected, because snow symbolism is purity. Now, what does the sun mean? The sun blaze mean? It means that just as the moon is a symbolism of coolness, the sun is a symbol of light and awareness. So how can the being, the individual, gain asked? And because this question is being asked this way by the Siddhs, what they are getting at is so that you can live forever. And how does one live forever? Because consciousness is something that never dies. And when you connect your consciousness with the divine awareness, that consciousness lives. So reflecting on who the questions is being asked, who is asking the question, the Siddhs are asking a very important question because they live for many, many, many years. They can prolong their lives. They can control their breath. They can do all these things with the purpose of never dying, because there's still a fear in them about dying. And therefore, they do all these exercises to avoid death, because they believe they are supreme, that they have the power. And so to live in that. So let's see how Guru Sahib replies. He answers that in that last one, Guru Sahib says, Nanak contemplates on the utterance of that Bani, that Guru Sahib is saying, on divine wisdom. And then from that divine wisdom, I'm going to answer the question. So when we have been going so far in our questions, how do you answer the question, the eternal question, or even the transitory question? Are we seeking that divine wisdom to answer that question? Here is an inkling. Here is a clue. Here is a guide that even Guru Sahib is saying, I'm going to take that as my guide, and I'm now going to tell you I'm going to answer that question. But before we go there, because these are Siddhs who are asking the question, and because it is a yogic thing, I'm going to try and put a yogic perspective to this. It could be, there's a school of thought that says that the Siddhs could be testing Guru Sahib, whether he knows their techniques. Because remember, this is about one-manship, upmanship. They want to show to Guru Sahib, they've already called him Bal, child. So they're saying, okay, do you know, we're going to put these up to you. Do you even know the system? Do you know what we're talking about? So in the yogic system, there is something which is moon-shaped, which from where nectar flows. So this is that nectar that flows, the sun symbolisms. If we have practiced the physical yoga, you will know there's a technique called pranayama, which is related to the sun, where you perform this pranayama and it moves a nerve. It moves a nerve in your body in a particular location. It moves the nerve to a particular location. What that does, it releases the heat within the body, which is the sun. And then what that does, it opens the 10th door. This is a process. So you do this technique, it does something within the body, which is this nerve gets moved into a particular position. And when that nerve gets put, the 10th door opens, there is this freedom, there is all this happening. So there's a physical opening that is taking place, and there's a perfecting of a technique. So when they perfect this technique, they overcome this death, this fear of death, because they have now reached that place where they control it. They can prolong their life, and they have this. So this is that yogic way of doing things, which I found really interesting to present this to you too, because of the symbolisms that are going on over here and all that is happening. So two things are happening over here. First is the symbolism is being introduced, and the Siddhs are asking from a physical level what is happening. And Guru Sahib is going to, as we'll see in the next slide, he's going to take it to a metaphysical and enlightenment level. So he transfers. So what does Guru Sahib do? Let's look at the slide. Uttering Shabad, illumination of the moon becomes boundless. He's transferred this idea of that physical nectar to illumination. That when that light comes within you, when that jyot comes within you, and he transfers the idea of heat to Vaheguru's wisdom. And Guru Sahib says the basis of all this is Nam. So we've been talking about Nam for the last 3 sessions as well. And here again, Guru Sahib reiterates that Nam is it. And so if I may, I know Inderpreet, you've done it, so I think I'm old enough, and do it in contemporary language. And I mean no disrespect, that if I were to say something like this, can we go back to that? Yeah, thank you. It would be something like Sid's, Guru Sahib would be saying, okay, Sids, I know what, I know kind of like what you're asking me, but if you really want that moon in your life, if you want that coolness, if you want that illumination, so moon is Nam, right? And moon is Nam, and sun is Ekankar. And the sun is the giver. The sun is in, if I can quote from Paivir Singh, from Pidaji, he calls the Nami. He has this beautiful relationship between Nam and Nami, and the Nami is the giver. So the physical heat that the Siddhs are after is that opening of the 10th door, and Guru Sahib is saying this is through that illumination, that heat is the enlightenment. So it could be that in contemporary language would be, I understand you said what you're asking me, but trying physically to get to the idea of freedom, of moksha, of salvation, of however, whatever we think. But in my way, in my system, it's actually moon is Nam, and through the culture of Nam, and the sun is the source, it's through that you will get freedom. And when you connect with the source, with the Nami, with the Ekankar, and when you can see the one in creation, which is, and live in that one, in that culture of Nam, where there is that acceptance, there is that seeing the one in all, seeing the one in the creation, that is when the nectar flows. That's all the nectar that I need. That's all the wisdom that I need. Everything is in that. It is when I connect to the source, when I connect to the Ekankar, that is when the Nam flows, and I live in that, and that is enlightenment. So that is seeing the one in everything. When we are able to see that, when we can feel the one in everything, then only there is no fear. We become that timeless, that quality of timelessness enters. Time is no longer linear, it is circular. There is a vastness that enters us. And that is true freedom. That is which we also, in Asa Ki Baar, we hear that time and time again when you listen to Asa Ki Baar, that is that vastness, that freedom, which we are capable of doing. So Inderpreet, before we move on to the next, is there anything here you want to share? Because I was doing more of the yogic and all that, or we can go to the next one and then we can talk about that. Next slide.
Yeah, I think we can go to the next slide.
Okay. So then, how do we overcome? How do we bring this harmony, serenity, wisdom, it's very clear to bring that is only attained through Nam. Because, we as individuals, we cannot live in a singular world. We have to live in harmony where we don't see the other, where the dujabha, where the other, because as long as there is that other within, where we see the other, there is always that duality within us. And that is what causes the friction. It is only when we can see the one that we can aspire to overcome death and to live in that state of being where we are. Now, by no means that is going to happen overnight, but it's a gradual process. The less and less you begin to see the less of the other and see more of the one, that is where you'll see the progression within yourself. Harmony is at different levels. And as that duality goes below you, becomes less within you, you are connected then with something far greater. And there's a sense of balance that comes within you. And that's when, the pain and joy, it becomes equal, because it comes from that understanding. It's not that you don't feel the pain, and it's not that you don't feel the joy. It is that acceptance that they're two sides of the same coin. And that, yes, you feel the pain in the others. So you're very much part of that. It's not that you're feeling the pain of others and you're not connected, but you are very much connected. But in that pain, where you are seeing that pain, you are serving. In that joy, that you are rejoicing with the acknowledgement that this is an hukam as well. That this is just not all happening because of me. And that's that point, which is overcoming the fear of death, overcoming living into that life. This is a level of attainment which we need, or which we would like to bring in our lives, and to live in a divine awareness that there is something far greater than just me. And never losing sight of that reality of being there. How do we do that? I think the inspiration, yes, comes from being in the company of individuals. The more you invest in being with like-minded individuals, the less it is that when you fall, because we will all fall. There are many times in our lives that we'll say, this is just too difficult, this is too much. And that's where the Sangat element comes in, which is so important and helps you, lifts you, guides you, that it's okay, we're there to catch you. So while this is, which Inderpreet has said over and over again, this is an individual journey, to a certain extent, yes, it is an individual journey. It's very much because you are the one who's making the effort. You are the one who wants this. You're the one who wants to taste this timelessness quality. You're the one who wants to overcome death. But there is that Sangat element, that there's all this around you also. And the guiding force is the Guru. Without that, without the Shabad and the Sangat, it's going to be pretty tough to do that. So take that application. I think the first thing is to try to develop that circle of like-minded individuals, that friendship which is there, which will take you across. I mean, we always have choices, right, to make. Which company do you want to be with? Are you going to be in the company of people who are going to tear everything apart and find fault in everything? Or are you going to be in the company of people who recognize that and say how to build ourselves, to look beyond? Those are the choices, very much is which we make, which each one of us makes. And as we make those choices, we from that place of wisdom, whatever we have gained, we experience that we can develop a closer relationship with Shabad, with Guru, and therefore see and maybe experience at certain level that when pain and joy become the same. Inderpreet?
Yeah, I want to just add one other element of this. I think you've covered it very broadly, and it should tie in with maybe what was covered yesterday. But these ideas about how to tackle the fear of death should not be left as like theoretical, right? We have historical examples that we can model this after, and it was covered a little bit yesterday. But I encourage all of you to definitely dig deeper into Sikh history. And now knowing or having shared the kind of the Shabad ideas from the context of Sidh Gosti, related back to historical events and individuals in Sikh history, that and what their attitude of death was, right? How they really they didn't do it individually and in isolation. They did it. It was a lot of the historical episodes are about community, maybe some about battles, but there's individuals as well. So I think it's a very pertinent question all of us go through, but we're not left hanging to do it just by ourselves. We have historical inspiration, and as the last bullet says, we have contemporary inspiration of hanging out with or being in the company of individuals who can inspire us to tackle this fear or tackle death, whether it's happening to us or with our greater circle. Is keep that historical sense, I think, as another anchor.
Right. So this was a pretty intense session. Do you think we should go into something lighter, please, Inderpreet? Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. That there's 4 questions that, right? So I going to yet another one, I think will be too much. So I think let's take a little bit of a step back, allow some sharing to occur. Mm-hmm. Right? These are 4 questions that we have, and we want to go like with the concept of what, right? Like why is this? So what did we learn, or what are your takeaways? Why do you think it's important? How does it matter? But then more importantly, are you ready to pursue these questions to better engage, have maybe have answers in your mind or have it ready, or maybe it doesn't apply. So it's okay to also feel that way. And but if you do, then how are you going to apply? What are specific things you can do to apply these ideas to yourself? So the facilitators are going to break us up into groups. Okay. So I think we can continue on. So hopefully everyone had some time. It was short, I'm sure, for a lot to reflect on those different questions. I can just share some observations. I didn't get a chance to go through all the different teams, but I did hear a few things. Number one, I would share is that there was, in one of the groups, there was a sense that was a lot of information. And, immediately jumping from all that information intake to process it and share. So we acknowledge that could be, not easy to do. But again, I look at the positive. The fact that it was information and the processing is going on, I think is one of the goals we wanted to achieve. One term that was mentioned, out of all of the sessions, this was one of the most pensive ones, which I understood to be that very thought-provoking, that you take such broad questions, but there is the ability to apply it to ourselves, and to think about it for ourselves. And it's not just a, what kind of esoteric, metaphysical type of question. So that was another observation, that there was someone who said that this is something that will really provoke thought within themselves. I jumped to another group, and that group mentioned that the 4th question was the last question was the most difficult one, because a lot of people, like me too, I'm very comfortable engaging in question and answer, engaging in discussions, but converting that learning, that knowledge, or that inspiration into actual action and creating a action plan requires discipline. So it takes time. And again, putting it back to the original point is that there's a lot of information, and yes, thoughtfully creating an action plan for yourself. Hopefully, what we're trying to do is get to that point where you will even think about that. And then finally, the last piece about like 1 minute I was hearing is they were discussing about sharing, like the whole, I took it as the idea of jo aap jape avre naam japaave. I mean, this is something that's been really hit me, and I love to share it, is that the fundamental, or one of the fundamental I see in the world view of Guru Nanak and all the gurus, and maybe other faiths or other sects might be that it's about sharing, and it's about a collective. So it's not about teaching and bringing along and then doing conversions and getting the most numbers, but it's more about getting the right quality through sharing. And just for a Sikh to be a good Sikh is an automatic sharing, right? That comes with it. So I wanted to conclude with that. Those are probably the things that I took out of there, what I heard through the discussion. Benji, I don't know if you want to share anything else.
I know, we are tight for time, so I'd like to get to the last session because there were a couple of questions reflections that came up, which this last question would hopefully be able to touch on, and they would get their answers. It was very interesting. Thank you for the privilege of us stepping in and listening to your thoughts about that. You were very open and very kind, and I appreciate that. Yes, one of you said that, never looked at life to accept pain and sorrow, joy and pain with the same grace, as they're two sides of one coin, that they would take away from that. So we come to now the last part. All this, throughout this whole time, you have been hearing about Gurmukh. In the previous session, Jaspreet Kaur and Sanbir Singh covered who's a Gurmukh very well. They took you through on that journey. And there is this one line, Gurmukh Nam Dan Ishnan. What does this mean? This line honestly has haunted me when I began my journey into Sidh Ghost. I knew this was important. I had an inkling of what it is, and an inkling of what Dan was. Ishnan, could not understand it at all, did not understand the depth or anything. So I am going to try to venture to walk you through how to become a Gurmukh. And this is not from me. Everything which I'm going to share mostly from here onwards is from the works of Paisa Bhai Singh Ji. And bear with me as we walk through this part. So if we go to the next slide, I begin with Ishnan. And the Ishnan, yes, bathing, we know that. Cleansing, we can relate to. But then there's that reflection part. That is part of Ishnan. So now when we've looked at this word through the three things, bathing, cleansing, reflection. Bathing is the body, yes. Cleansing is looking within and seeing our darkness. Reflecting is on what have we done about that, the effort that we have made, if we have, to cleanse darkness. It's that continuing reflecting, it's a continuing process. So I'm going to walk you through. I'm in a bit of a hurry because I'm conscious of the time. But I want to walk you through a couple of, you can call them body, intellect, or senses cleansing. So in the body, it's very simple. How do you keep the body clean and healthy? Yes, bathe, do all that. Carry on your responsibilities. Have a healthy body. Remember, the Siddhs were starving themselves. They were putting their bodies through all sorts of exercises, horrible things to get to this stage. This is body Ishnan. Next, we come to Man Ishnan, which is clean, protect your mind from inferior thoughts. That is Manda Ishnan. Then is the next step, because from the higher than the mind is the intellect. Keep your intellect, your mat, clean from unethical thoughts. Keep those firmly in command over the mind, because a clean and strong intellect can discern what the mind is thinking, whether that thinking is beneficial or not. So this is Mat da Ishnan. Then we come to Chit. Chit is your consciousness. How do you do Chit da Ishnan? So in that consciousness, there are numerous thoughts that come in and out, and they're coming at rapid speeds. So try to be aware of that, get rid of those harmful thoughts. And the idea is, the reason is so that when you do that, you protect your consciousness, you allow the virtues to dominate your consciousness and not the harmful thoughts. So this is when to slow those down so that virtues can reside. And the last one is Atma. So Atma, which or we call, people refer it to soul, refer it to life force, essence, whatever that meaning means to you. That happens in this way is when there is an objective realization that you are separate from the body, that you are a spirit, you are the Jyot, you are the light. That is the Atma. And this is what Kabirji says, that this spirit, that the spirit within us is the spirit of the Charma Divine. And the Charma Divine is the Ram. That's how we translate it, that quality. So these are the types of Ishnan. Where are we in our journey? Do we even know that? So this is bringing the mind to that awareness, of giving you the ways of how you can think about this Nam Dan Ishnan, how you can try to incorporate Ishnan within you. It is only after that you have been through the Ishnan process can you truly know what Dan is. So if we go to the next slide, and which is Dan. Yes, Dan is of food, water, medicine. We all know that because that's physical. That is the body Dan. There is also another Dan which I wanted to share with you. This is the Dan of sweet words. When you speak sweetly, when you spread that. And this is part of Anand Sahib, oh my tongue, what have you? You're here to spread sweetness. Oh my ears, you're here to hear the divine sound. This is that Dan which we speak about. The second Dan is Dan of the mind. When there's a desire within you to do good deeds, that desire makes your body walk the path of Dan, which is enabling Dan, that giving to transpire. Then there is Dan of the Buddhi, your intellect. This is when there is a distinguishing quality which you recognize who are the really needy ones and provide them with that need, not just for that need, but to enable them to be self-sufficient. And also there is an element that you recognize your giving power. You know that within you, and you can do it, but don't get egotistic about it and don't seek recognition for it. So you recognize that you have this giving power, but if you can rise above that need for that expectation of that wahwa from the community or from anybody, then when that expectation is left behind, and I want to spend a little bit of time here, when that expectation is left behind, insight emerges. That insight, when you share that insight, you illuminate that world. It is with your intelligence, you light up others' intellect, like a lit lamp lights others' lamp. So think about that, because this is very powerful. The Dan of the mind, we are all very comfortable with the Dan of the body, but we're taking it to a step further. And when Dan becomes part of your consciousness, because of your chit, you recognize that Dan is not yours to give. It is a state of being where everything flows from you. It is spontaneous. It is from that natural, intuitive, inherent self of you. This is when pain and comfort come alike, and you treat everyone equally. I also want to mention that in Daan, forgiveness is a very big part. It's that stage of when it is not that you forgive, forgiveness flows from you. And it is when you say, I forgive you, you're still holding on to you as being superior, as you have something. But forgiveness is just part of that whole giving of Daan. You don't hold anything back. It's the Inni. How can I give? If it has left me, it is because it was never mine. And if it is meant to be, it will come back. To be in that state of mind, which is tough. It's tough because that recognition, ye o mera hega hai, ya mera si, it will come back. And the crown jewel is the next one, the Nam. So when you know what Ishnan is, you've been through that, you know what Daan is, you've experienced some of that, then comes Nam. And we've been through Nam, we've been talking about Nam, what Nam is throughout this entire 4 sessions. I'm going to, and this part is really about Pitaji and how he has explained it, Paisa Paivir Singh Ji. And even in today's Hukam, the third Pacha is asking for what? He asked for what? He asked for Nam. So what is Nam? And I'm going to share with you what Pitaji has written. Nam is the form of the divine, as sunlight is the form of the sun. When we experience sunlight, we feel we have attained the sun, we have touched the sun. Similarly, when we attain Nam, it is as if we have touched the Nami, attained the Nami, the giver. And Guru says, time and time again, the continuous flow of remembrance of Simran is Nam. So how can we remember? How do we remember? One of the ways which we remember is Nam Jap, is we utter, we recite with our tongue. When the tongue starts reciting and it moves, then that remembering moves into the heart and we begin to turn inwards. And from the tongue, it begins into the heart, and then from there it moves into the man, into the mind, and it becomes Simran of the mind, where the stray thoughts slow down and the remembrance, the Nam, becomes stronger. And then he writes that there's a deeper stage. When Nam goes deeper, it reaches the subtle places within you. And he writes, we don't know how it happens, but when it begins to live there, the intellect gets cleansed and the shadows which you have within you, they disappear. And what that does is the effect within spreads, like your entire inner being is cleansed and it's become clear and beautiful. And the intellect rises and it becomes, you begin to live, the mind operates in a higher awareness. And it is an illuminating experience. And this is where your conscious then is free, is illusion free, and it bathes in those waters where it is from. So this is where Nam lives. This is the true form of your being, of that akal, of that timelessness. And this is how you connect with the giver. So the Guru says, the Guru-oriented being contemplates Nam, Daan, Ishnan, and therefore merges in Nam. So Nam is a state of mind. It is an experience. It is a realization. And it's living in that experience is the state of Nam. That is the culture of Nam. It's the more you are connected, the more you remember, the more you operate from that remembrance, in that remembrance, living with that realization that you're part of that divine light. And we come to the end slide, which is Nam Daan Ishnan Inderpreet. So what does Ishnan do? Ishnan actually connects you to yourself. Daan connects you to the world, and Nam connects you to Vaheguru. And when you incorporate these three things in your life, you become liberated. The path is right there in front of you. Our journey is, how do we do these three things? How do we actually even begin with Ishnan and begin to start looking within and cleansing ourselves? So there is no time to take questions on this one. I apologize, because we need to go to the next one in the pre.
Yeah, and Sidh Ghosh spent Guru Nanak spent a considerable time talking about Gurmukh. So Inni Panji covered that one main line, but I would definitely invite everyone to go back after these sessions are over. Go back to those, and in classic Guru Nanak style, he gives us so much listing of so many ways that we can connect and understand Gurmukh, that it's phenomenal. He does it all in all of his Shabads. But I wanted to conclude with really two or three main points. This is just there for your reference. So in the Bani section, you actually transcreated this. This is the second last body of Sidh Ghosh, where Guru Sahib just presents what's really the conclusion. All of your questions, the 88 questions that the Sidhs asked, 5 of those sub-questions that we tried to share with you. He says that the doctrine is of Shabad. It's really Shabad and Nam is what will get you the answers, and all other forms will, of what you perceive as yoga, the true union is not through the mechanics. And this is what we started with Professor Spoor and Singh as well. So, but the 3 things I want to leave you with is, number 1, I hope you got today that questioning is part and parcel of learning, right? The Siddhs are asking questions of Guru, and in some way it's like he's challenging, and he's trying to, the Siddhs are trying to challenge and kind of be confrontational, but the way the Guru answers. So questioning and answers, and how we engage with question and answers of life is also very important, the process by which we do that. Again, Shabad being the anchor to all of those things. And maybe something that you took away today, all of those questions, the answers are always pretty much very similar. Hukam, Nam, Shabad, Ikonkar, those are like the real, at the end of the day, if there are eternal questions, the eternal answers are back in those subjects there. So it makes sense to engage with that and become more familiar with that as best as possible. And the application. So this is not an individual journey only, although it begins with there. Just like the triangle, I like that, right? So it's the journey is of the self, but then the self has to have some kind of impact, not just and be focused around here. It has to get to the world, right? And to get to the world takes steps as well. It may be family, it may be community, it may be country, then eventually to the world. So in every action and every answers to our eternal questions, think about the long term and the broader context, I think, is what we want to have you take away today as well. So it goes from personal panthic to the world, which is life itself. So the broadness of the Guru as presented within Sidh Ghosh through our 5 sample questions is what we wanted to share. And as Inni Panji said, we're actually right on time, but I think Anu will take us to a conclusion. I think if there's a venue that we can have more question and answers, maybe separately after today's session and through all of Siddak, we'll hopefully try to arrange that as well. So thank you very much, and I really it was a privilege to engage with people from all over the world.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Inderpreet Singh and Inni Kaur.
There we go.
All right, so another inspirational session yet again. And I think this one has left everyone with a lot to think about and to contemplate over the next 24 hours as we set up for our next presentation, which is exactly what Inderpreet Singh was just talking about, where we're modeling, the title of our session tomorrow is Model, Dialogue, and Connection. And so our three presenters tomorrow, Avinash Kaur, Devish Singh, and Kulveer Singh, will take us into that the world and how we connect, and what does all of what we have learned through Sidh Ghost, and how does that apply to the world around us. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you tomorrow. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.